Yet another gas station fallen prey to armed robberies. A Shell station in the 4,000 block of Pulaski, Iowa was robbed around 11:45 a.m. this morning, making that a total of 7 gas stations to be attacked in the last week.
And we're told the suspect remains in car. Please, we have a credible description on the person. The suspect described as a white male. Why are you celebrating?
Oh, nothing. We're just glad to know what everything looks like.
Anyway, these suspects was last spotted fleeing the scene on foot. So anyone with information is being asked to contact the FTV immediately.
Yes. Help us catch this white lady.
In other news, a Ponzi scheme has shaken some of Miami's wealthiest residents.
That's funny on the show.
Clement Smith Investment Securities is accused of committing this egregious white-collar crime. Smith is said to have been operating a multi-billion-dollar Ponzi scheme.
Maybe I'm lucky we never have money.
He was arrested this morning in Boca Raton.
Okay. So I guess we tied, you know.
This is ridiculous. No one's keeping score. Okay, we have an update on that tropical storm we've been tracking. Let's hear from WAMU weatherman Dennis Jones. Dennis?
Thanks, Pam. What we've previously been calling a tropical storm has upgraded to a Category 4 hurricane. It's destroying just about everything in its path with incredibly high winds. Now, we're calling this one Hurricane Check, and that's a white man's name if I've ever heard one. That makes 2 of y'all.
That doesn't count. Hurricanes aren't white.
Let's take a check.
Move on from this petty game, please.
Y'all lose?
Okay, let's just get back to the news. A Fort Lauderdale man was apprehended outside of a Cracker Barrel, cutting brake lines on a dozen bird scooters.
I like it better kind of time. Okay.
Okay, yeah, he's white. So what?
So now we're down to 1.
It's not looking good for y'all today. In other news, a shopper was apprehended by security at Oceanside Mall for assaulting a man who stepped on his Air Jordans.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's black for sure.
Okay, how about this one? A local woman attacked a cashier at a nail shop after they refused to take her welfare call. Police say they're looking for a 19-year-old white cat.
Police say
This incident happened in the Utah National State Park.
not looking good.
The family of the man, now identified as Laquan Jenkins,
I'm the one rock climbing in Utah.
A man dressed as the Joker.
This is an example. I think I might have written. So that's obviously like one of those trick questions. But the formula is like 200 squared. You know what I mean? Like this huge thing. That happens. Yeah, it happens on 2, 4, 6. On like 1, 2, 3, 4. But then on 5, it's like 5.
I felt like
Okay, so today we will go into RL with function approximation and use that as a segue into learning by generalization. Which is what you always call learning. In general, in your life, when you thought something said learning, it typically meant generalization. But we actually also now know reinforcement learning, which is a different kind of learning. And now we will combine reinforcement learning and generalization. And we will use that essentially as a segue into general discussion about generalization techniques, which is typically called machine learning. Even though machine learning should include reinforcement learning, most people who wind up taking machine learning courses mostly do generalization. That's what they wind up doing. Okay, so a couple of administrative things. The midterm is going to be the next Thursday. It will be in class. And then remember that next week is fall break, so there is no class on 10:15. So you basically come and take the class, take the exam on 10:17. There will be office hours, of course, on Wednesday. I think the fall break ends on Wednesday, right? So, and then I'll also send you guys by then a recorded review session that sort of reviews everything that's been done until last class is included for the class. From today onwards, it's not included for this test. Okay, so there will be a review session video that you can watch. Basically, it's actually taught by TAs, so it's at least in a different style and different voice. And you get to use that. And then I'll also try to send you like an exam paper, like a sample exam paper, so that you know how things work. But most importantly, the homework on reinforcement learning is due this weekend. And then as soon as that is over, then we'll put out the solutions for that, so you'll have solutions for all the homeworks, that would be covered in the exam. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So basically, I had a quiz for you. What's the next number in this series? 2, 4, 6, 8. What is the next number in the series? What? What? 1 million. What do you think? 9. Any majority answer? If this was on GRE or SAP, what would you say? Right? So, actually, it turns out that, first of all, this is connected to the SNL sketch. Everything is connected in life. Okay, it wasn't that SNL sketch was being shown so that you can pass time. Remember, like one of the best cases was this guy goes rock climbing in Utah, and all your stereotypes are coming one after other as to white as white can be do going up, and then the stereotype is broken. Okay? Basically, you have to generalize from your experience, but your generalizations will always be wrong in some cases. Without generalizations, you can't live. Without understanding that your generalizations will fail, you would be a terrible agent and also a terrible human being. Okay? So in this particular case, 2, 4, 6, 8, most of us think it's 10. Right? Actually, the answer is 42. But of course, the answer is 42 because all of us know why answer is 42. Why is answer 42? It's the meaning of life. Right? How many of you have seen, Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy? So, it's 42. Now, why the heck is it 42? Well, then I'll ask you, why did you think it was 10? Basically, what happened was, you have some sort of a graph, and you're essentially saying, well, the first one is 2, next one is 4, next one is 6, next one is 8. Those are the points, right? I only gave you the points, right? And then what you decided was, well, if it is a point, then maybe I'll just put a straight line to this. If I put a straight line to this, the next one will be 10. Did I tell you you are supposed to put a straight line to this? No. You just jumped ahead and put a straight line because straight line seems to work most of the time. In general, you used some sort of a bias that everybody uses. Typically, when there is a bunch of points, you look for lines in it. That's because, so basically, in your grade school, you learned about least squares, straight line fitting. Gauss actually did this. Carl Friedrich Gauss, did this long back. And so you can fit a straight line to any point. In fact, these things look so damn good, as if they're exactly on the straight line, which they are, right? That you think, what else can it be? What else can be a guy who goes to rock climbing in Utah in some sort of clothes? I know, I've been around. Of the millions of people who show up in the runner's world, whatever, the outdoors, etc., the pictures seem to be mostly white as white can be. So I have decided. Okay, and yet, it can happen that in fact that person is not white. Okay, and similarly, here, you said it's straight line because they're all in straight line, but can I not fit some other curve to it? Of course I can. Okay, in fact, can I fit a sine curve to it? Yes, of course. There will be a sine curve of this kind. Based on that, it will tell you what the value here is. Okay, can I fit a parabola to it? Yeah, you can sort of fit a parabola with errors, of course. There is no exact in these numbers. Okay? And so you might fit a parabola to it. So in fact, it turns out that here I decided there are 4 numbers, right? And so I decided to fit a 4th order polynomial. The best 4th order polynomial that money can find. Okay? And so in fact, the picture looks like that. So this is your straight line. According to this, you think your expectation is that the next number will be 10. But if you fit a 4th order polynomial, you notice how it went nicely. As far as you're concerned, the data that you have is consistent with this as well as this hypothesis. They're both completely indistinguishable. Okay? And so according to this, if this was the hypothesis you go with, you say it's 42 because that value is 42. In fact, you can make it anything by fitting a different curve. In fact, you decide what your number you want it to be, put that as the 5th number, and fit a polynomial. Do you see what I'm saying? Now all of a sudden your life looks on shaky grounds. Because everything that you thought was obvious, obviously 2, 4, 6, 8 must be 10, next one will be 10, then that's not obvious at all. One of the interesting questions, of course, is you might say, well, if I just give you 2, 4, 6, 7, if I have no way to, if I basically have no way of guessing the next number, if I have to guess the next number, I have to sort of have some kind of an idea as to what hypotheses are more likely and what hypotheses are less likely. In looking for straight line things, first we are assuming that the world is made more of straight lines. You see what I'm saying? So in fact, there is a joke about how psychologists can always find straight lines in any kind of data. Okay? So imagine if you have a data like this, right? Psychologists will say, well, really, this is the straight line. Because the other stuff is just noise, experimental noise. Okay, you can always find a straight line in anything. You can always find any kth order polynomial in anything. You can always find any particular function of family of function. Given any family of functions, you can find something from that family probably in your data. The question is, why did you go for straight lines? That's a bias. Outside of this class, before you heard about machine learning, the word bias was always a negative word. Nobody ever says, what a nice biased guy you are. It just never happens. Okay? But the reality is, you are here today because your ancestors had biases. Do you understand what I'm saying? Your ancestors had biases. They had to make quick generalizations with less number of examples. They found one tiger was eating one guy. They found another tiger was eating another of their friends. They made a generalization. Tigers are bad news. They're going to eat people. So the moment they see the tiger, they'll start running. And I think I mentioned this in the class maybe. Did they ever think about the feelings of the tiger? What if the tiger just wanted to say hello to you? And, replace tiger with a brown guy like me and you run away from me, then I'll say you racist. Do you know what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? Again, the point is learning is possible because of biases. And yet, of course, there is this whole entire issue of how do you use generalizations when there are high costs for false positives. That's a whole entire issue. And if there are high costs for false positives, you should be very careful and not generalize. But if you make a blanket rule saying you'll never generalize, and if your ancestors made that blanket rule, then you won't be here. Because they would have been eaten by the next passing tiger. Do you see what I'm saying? And in fact, biases come in all sorts of other things. When you are a kid, somebody shows you, little kid, somebody is, that father or mother takes the kid out and they're trying to learn vocabulary. They show that huge, big, yellow thingy and say, bus. Okay? The kid sort of assumes that entire whole yellow thing is the bus. Why? What if the father or mother was saying that the guy sitting in the driver's seat is called bus? Remember, you don't know English. You're trying to learn English from very few examples. This is what you do when you're a kid. What if, in fact, they are trying to show the driver and say, in fact, if they show bad parents, for example, will take their kids outside and show the bus in the general vicinity of the driver and say, that's the driver. And the kid will assume the entire bus is the driver. Do you understand what I'm saying? If the kid does not assume entire bus is the driver, if the other thing the kid can do is, let me wait. I'm sure there'll be more examples. Okay, I don't know this whole bus concept. Let's wait for about 10 years and I'll figure out bus. Most likely after 1 year, you're under the bus. Do you see what I'm saying? So again, my point is that you make anything outside of the data here that you are bringing to bear to answer that question, that's bias. That basically is background knowledge. That's basically is prejudice. What does prejudice mean? Prejudice. Before you hear all the facts, you already have some expectations because of your life story, because of what you have read about the world. Words like prejudice, words like bias are only used badly in human societies. But if you didn't have them, you won't be around now. Part of being both human and smart is to understand A, that you need to generalize, and B, generalization will always be problematic. There's this beautiful statement that I will repeat somewhere else again, that induction, this particular kind of generalization called induction, which is the reason for the name today. Induction only extends your expectation, not your experience. Beautiful, very deep thing. But on the other hand, if you try to live by that, essentially let me get full experience before I start making any kind of generalizations, you won't get anywhere. Okay? Keep that in back of mind, and again remember that. So in fact, this generalization is the part of machine learning that is beset with all these bias problems. Of course, there are variations of this that come in reinforcement learning too, but like the maximum things come when from limited data you're jumping to conclusions. Oftentimes, ability to jump to conclusions with less amount of data is actually considered smart, because you have a lifetime of experiences. In fact, it's always been said, I think, we'll say it here too, that current machine learning systems require too much training data. They need to be shown, what, like 14 million pictures of dogs, cats, etc., to figure out what is a dog, what is a cat. If that's the amount of data that we have to show to kids, there is not enough time for childhood. You see what I'm saying? So kids are somehow, they're very quickly trying to use all sorts of inbuilt biases. For example, in that bus case, cognitive psychologists and child psychologists say that kids are born with what's called the whole object bias. That essentially means that if they don't know what the word is, they'll assume that the word is referring to the entire object, not a part of it. And having figured that out, then next time around if you give a new word and showing the same object, then they might consider that it might be for part of the object rather than the whole object. The universe doesn't have to do this for you, but you just assume. Similarly, the universe doesn't have to give you data such that it all falls on a straight line. You're just hoping that that's the case. And in fact, the fact that you're still around shows that the universe actually sort of seems to be doing this. This is one of these beautiful other points, which is the surprising, which is the surprising effectiveness of linearity assumptions. You just tend to, just as you assume whole object, as a bias, you tend to assume, if you don't tell me anything, I'll assume there's a straight line there. And I have to be pushed to kind of get away from straight line and start looking for other things in general. And this is what we did, and we got along. We actually got along quite fine. Because it seems as if linearity assumption seems to work in the world that we live in. It may not work on Jupiter or something, but it seems to work in our world. That's kind of a strange thing. Okay, this is connected to this another kind of paper. There's an old paper called the Surprising Effectiveness of Math in Physical Sciences. Why should it be that math, which is something that we invented, We relate it to how the world works. It seems to, but why? You see, this is one of these kinds of paradoxes. I can't answer this right now, but linearity assumption seems to be a good assumption to make most of the time. It sometimes will fail, then you have to go to the other things. The first default is you'll try linearity assumption. Okay, similarly, whole object assumption is what you will try first before you go to something bigger. Okay, keep all that in mind. And then, of course, remember that the SNL thing is actually talking about the same thing, except with humans and very taboo subjects. Okay. Anyway, so let's go to what we wanted to talk about, and this whole discussion will continue again into in the class discussion today. So we have seen until now market processes and reinforcement learning. Okay, if you are given known MDP, that means known model. Known model, basically known MDP essentially means I've been given T and R. And of course S, you assume, all of them sort of assume S is available. Actually, if you know one state and you get T, then you know the rest of the states. Right, because the T will tell you how to go to the other things. Okay, so if you give T and R, then you typically are interested in either computing optimal policy or evaluating a single policy. And you have algorithms for all of them. We looked at value iteration, policy iteration, and we also looked at policy evaluation. In fact, we, also on top of this, we also looked at finite versus infinite horizon. Okay? And all of these are essentially called offline solutions in the sense that you are computing the optimal policy and they're just executing it at the execution. We also looked at online solutions. Before we even came into value and policy iteration, we looked at RTDP, and which is real-time dynamic programming, which looks like expect-Emacs basically. That was an online method. And there is another method called basically UCT, actually it should be UCT, or Monte Carlo tree search, which we didn't discuss, but that's also falls in the online inference methods. Okay? So we know this, we know this, we know this at least. And then if you don't have the MDP model, that means you don't know T and R, that's when we started calling it learning. We started calling it reinforcement learning. Okay, and then we said you may be interested in computing the optimal value or policy or the Q value. Okay, you can do this interestingly either model based or model free. Model based means that you first learn T and then learn everything else. Model free, don't learn T. Okay? Don't learn T. Okay? And so we looked at both the model-based approaches and the model-free approaches. Right? All of this has been done. Okay, if this is looking very strange, then obviously you're not getting much out of the book, not attending the class. Okay, so that's the story till now. And what we want to do today is consider this one specific issue, which is until now we looked at atomic representations, where every state is unique. There is no such thing called two different states having the same representation. There is no such thing. They can have the same value, that's possible. But they don't have same representation because each state, it's like a social security number. No two individuals have the same social security number. Okay? Imagine, here's a very interesting thing. Since we were talking about this SNL thing, imagine that sketch was done. That sketch was done or your life was done only in terms of social security numbers. So I know the social security numbers of people who have taken this class and their grades in the past. Can I then generalize it to figure out what kinds of students here will do well and what won't? It's useless because unless you're some kind of a major loser, you are not going to take the same course the second time. Right? Or you really have some fixation on looking at me. You are not going to take this course again. So then why would I wind up knowing that some number of people, their social security numbers had certain grade, doesn't tell me at all about what your grades are likely to be. Okay? But I do have expectations. You guys don't know this, but I have expectations as to which of you are going to do well, which are not going to do well. The only difference is I'm a smart human. I won't let my expectations change the reality. If the reality, if you wind up doing a much better exam than I expected you to, you will get that grade. Do you see what I'm saying? So I do have an expectation. Why do you think I have an expectation as to who will do well and who doesn't do well? Because I don't remember you by social security numbers. But I remember you by things like features. Are they paying attention? Okay? Are they coming to the class all the time? What are like what are their grades on the homeworks and midterms, etc. Do you see what I'm saying? These are representations of individuals. These are not atomic anymore. These are feature-based representations of individuals, because of which there could be two individuals who have the same features, because of which generalization is now possible. So people who showed up to the class and got these kinds of numbers in their homeworks and were paying this much amount of attention were getting this kind of a grade last time. So if you happen to be exactly the same, I'll expect you will get to the same exactly. That's my expectation. You see what I'm saying? So first of all, it's important to understand that in atomic representation, generalization is not possible. It's a very obvious thing, but it's worthwhile understanding. In fact, if you take any course on machine learning, they will start with generalization first. Nobody ever starts with reinforcement learning, except here. Okay? And every kind of machine learning requires feature-based representations. Because if every state is unique, there's nothing you're going to learn. You can memorize, but you're not going to learn anything. The memorization is a kind of a learning. Like, if the same person again shows up, you can remember, oh, your grade is this. That particular social security number's grade is this. But when we say learn, we are talking about generalization. You did not know about the guy who was in Utah doing rock climbing. You don't know this guy's social security number. And yet you had, I assume a lot of you, had an expectation on his skin tone. You don't have to admit, but you had an expectation. Most of you did.